to the World's Gone Mad podcast. I'm Garry Butterfield. It is Easter Monday, April 13th, I'm pretty sure, 2020. It is about 6:30 in the morning. I'm sitting in my humble little studio, about to pump out another podcast, even though I did one yesterday. Got a few things I want to talk about just because, why not? It's my podcast. I do what I want. So yeah, today I'm just going to be talking a little bit about vaccines, herd immunity, and vaccine courts. With all the shit that's going on in the world right now, COVID-19, coronavirus, everyone's talking about what's going on. What are they going to do? Lockdowns, herd immunity, vaccines. And it blows my mind, right? I know not everyone is as cynical as me. I know not everyone thinks the government is doing wrong by us all. But it still amazes me how people think that the government's main priority is to have our best interest at heart. People still think that the government make vaccines, or not governments, but the pharmaceutical companies make vaccines for the sole purpose of making sure we are okay, not that they're in it for making money or other nefarious reasons. People just think that doctors, pharmaceutical companies, and the government are always, without fail, without question, just blind faith, think that they have our best interest at heart, and they do not. They do not. So there's people sitting around now thinking that 18 months from now, we will have a coronavirus vaccine and everything will be fine. They want the vaccine, they think it will solve everything, and they're actually sitting around waiting for it. And that blows my mind. That blows my mind. I can't get my head around that because I don't want a vaccine, like a coronavirus vaccine. I wouldn't take it. They're claiming they should have one ready in 18 months. Excuse me, just having a quiet little sip of Jackson Coke at fucking 6:30 in the morning, as you do. But I like it for some reason while I'm doing a podcast. Why not have a bit of a drink? But yeah, people sitting around thinking in 18 months they're going to have a coronavirus vaccine that's just going to solve all the coronavirus fucking problems. I get it though. People are looking for something to cling on to hope about. But if you look into it at all, just even a little bit, if you just Google for 5 minutes, you'd probably at least be like, ooh, maybe they're just telling me what I want to hear. The fastest vaccine ever produced in the history of mankind was the measles vaccine back in the fucking, whenever that was, the 90s, the 80s. 4 years it took them to produce that and make it readily available. 4 years. That is the quickest vaccine that has ever been produced and available for sale. 4 years. And they're talking about 18 months for coronavirus vaccine. Now, if they're fucking going to rush through, imagine how many corners you're going to cut. Imagine how many corners you're going to cut rushing through a vaccine. I do not want to be the first batch of fuckers who get that jabbed into them. I'm not even worried about coronavirus. I don't want to be sick, but I would rather be sick for a week and then be good a week later than having some unknown vaccine shoved into my fucking body. Let's just give a little bit of a history on vaccines, right? And drugs in general, manufactured by pharmaceutical companies. Now, Panadol, ibuprofen, that type of shit, that has to go through massive testing and takes roughly 10 to 13 years of testing and around $3 to $5 billion worth of research and development before that drug will ever hit the market and be available for consumption by the humans. That's a long time. Vaccines is nowhere near that amount of time. Nowhere near that amount of time. So 10 10 to 13 to 15 years is about the average it takes for a pharmaceutical company to get a drug to market and on the shelves for us to buy and use. And after all that time, if you take a couple of Panadol and for some reason your legs fall off, you will be able to go to court and sue, who is it, Bain or whoever the fuck make those things. You'll be able to sue them. Not the case with vaccines. Not the case. If you think you can get a vaccine and you get autism or you get paralyzed from straight after taking a vaccine, you are sadly mistaken. That does not happen. You cannot sue a pharmaceutical company for a vaccine. And let me tell you why. Back in the when was it? Back in the 70s, right? They started giving people vaccines for what was it? Tetanus, right? Even I had a tetanus shot when I was a kid. But back in 1979, a poor kid, 3-month-old infant named Kevin Toner, was vaccinated with the what did I just say it was? The tetanus shot, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. Now, back in the 70s, we didn't have what we now know as the vaccine court, and their family went straight to court and sued the pharmaceutical company for paralyzing their son. And they won. So in 1979, the parents of 3-month-old Kevin Toner won a lawsuit, and they got a massive payout from the pharmaceutical company because they were found to be negligent. The fucking shot could have been safer, and they sued. And after that happened, a bunch of other parents came forward and said, hey, this happened after my kid got a shot. This happened after little Timmy got a shot. And all these lawsuits started coming to the courts, and they started winning. Payouts were being given, and pharmaceutical companies were like, fuck, we're losing a lot of money. And I'm assuming that they put pressure on the powers that be at the time, and in 1986, Ronald Reagan, I think it was, passed a bill where if you sue a pharmaceutical company for a vaccine, you do not go to normal court anymore. You now go to what's now known as vaccine court. And vaccine court, I guess they framed it as, well, now we've got this special court, so if you sue a vaccine company, you don't have to prove that they were the cause of whatever went wrong, and you just it gets sorted out in this court. There's no jury, there's a judge, and it just goes through. The payouts aren't as big, it doesn't hit the papers, all that. It's just it's kind of like on the D-Lo. Vaccine courts are courts for the D-Lo. And ever since 1986, vaccine court was brought in, and you cannot sue a pharmaceutical company for something that goes wrong to your kid after they get a shot or a vaccine. And that still stands today in 2020. So if your kid gets autism, cancer, or just straight dies after getting a shot, you can't sue them. You'll go to vaccine court and you'll get a small payout from vaccine court. No jurors, no nothing. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that fucking crazy that you can get a vaccine passed in 4 years, might have some side effects, some people might react a certain way, but hey, it's all good. We're gonna let that out into the world. That blows my mind. That if Panadol and ibuprofen and stuff like that has to go through such testing, but vaccines don't, for the so-called greater good. Which brings me on to herd immunity. Excuse me, another sip of the old Jacks here. Herd immunity. And how people are also talking about now with the coronavirus. The vaccine's either going to come out or just let people back outside and we'll let herd immunity take care of it, right? But I'm not sure that's how herd immunity works. mean, I'm all for just letting it. I don't call it herd immunity when we're all on lockdown at the moment now, right? So we all don't get it. If the restrictions are lifted and we all just go outside and whoever gets it, that's not herd immunity. But I'm all for that, but that's not the principle of herd immunity. The idea of herd immunity, right, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong at wgmpod@gmail.com, herd immunity, right, was brought in, or they frame it so not everyone can get vaccinated. Some people are either immunocompromised or for some reason they can't get vaccinated, right? So it's up to the rest of us to get vaccinated to protect the minority who can't get vaccinated, right? So in the case of measles, they say 95% of the population needs to be vaccinated. So the 5% of people who are immunocompromised or whatever can't be vaccinated. So if the 95% of us get vaccinated, it will look after the 5%, right? That's the idea behind herd immunity. So let's break that down a little bit, shall we? If there's 300, I'm going to use US numbers because that's where I saw the study. If there's 300 million people in the United States, right? And they are saying that 1 out of 2,000 people are immunocompromised and can't be vaccinated. So you need to vaccinate the other 95% of the population. So that equals out to about 285 million people being vaccinated to protect the other, 15% of the other 15 million people who can't be vaccinated. So in order for herd immunity to work, we need to immunize 285 million people out of 300 million people so no one gets the measles. And that's assuming that the 285 million people, right? So I'm butchering this massively. They also say in the United States that one out of 2,000 people can't be vaccinated, right? So that equals to 170,000 people out of the 300 million who can't be vaccinated. So in order for herd immunity to actually work, they need to vaccinate the 285 million to protect the 170,000 people who can't be vaccinated, right? Does that make sense? For herd immunity to work for measles, we need to vaccinate the 285 million to protect the 170,000 people. Now that's assuming that out of the 285 million people who get vaccinated, nothing goes wrong. No one gets hurt. An absolutely flawless vaccination, right? And come on, let's be real. Is anything ever perfect? Let's just say 1% of that 285 million people get hurt. Which is probably going to, in all honesty, it's probably more than that, right? It's probably more than 1%. But let's just say it's 1% of the 285 million people that are getting hurt. That's 2.5 million people may be hurt just to save 170,000 people. Does that fucking make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? Probably the way I've explained it doesn't make sense. For herd immunity to work for measles, out of 300 million people, you need to vaccinate 285 million of them to protect the 170,000 people who can't be vaccinated. Now, let's just say 1% of that has some weird side effect or some weird reaction to the vaccination. Now, what's 1% of 285 million? That's 2.5 million fucking people that are going to get some kind of side effect or could get seriously hurt from this vaccination. Does that sound like a viable plan for society? To protect 170,000 people, I may need to hurt 2.5 million people. Huh? What? It's total fucking bullshit. Herd immunity is bullshit. It's total bullshit. Imagine how much money 285 million vaccinations are to a pharmaceutical company. Come back to the start of this podcast when I was saying, are pharmaceutical companies, are governments, do they actually have our best interests at heart? Or is maybe a little bit of money involved as well? I just want people to ask some questions. It does my head in how people just blindly follow the government and just blindly follow what a massive corporation tells them, what they want to hear, instead of actually just looking into it just a little bit further and just thinking, does that make sense to you? To protect 170,000 people, we may need to hurt 2.5 million people. That's herd immunity for you. That's what they sell to you. That's what they sell to you. And if you don't think about it, and if you don't look into it, you go, yeah, actually, herd immunity. We need herd immunity to protect the ones, the minorities. But what about if the vaccine isn't safe? How many people are getting hurt? That's all I'm saying. That's the point of this podcast today. It's not going to be a massive one. I just want people to think. Vaccines aren't always the answer. I'm putting it out there, I'm not a massive believer in it. I have a son who does not live here in Australia. He lives in America with his mother. And we are not vaxxers. He's had the 3 main vaccinations that I do believe work: mumps, rubella, and measles. But the other 50-odd vaccinations that they shove in a 6-month-old baby in America is total ludicrous, and we did not agree to it. So I'm just practicing what I preach. I will not be getting a COVID-19 vaccination if these crooks bring one out in, a year or whatever. How safe would that be? The quickest ever vaccine ever released. Will it be safe? Will it work? Side note, on the flu shots. I do not get flu shots, right? I used to work for a company that offered flu shots every single year for free as part of work, and I did not get them. Why? Because I don't get sick. I didn't get the flu every year. I get a head cold, once every 2 years or whatever, but I haven't had the flu since back in the day. And isn't it funny that in Australia, per capita, we are the highest country per capita who takes the flu shot. And guess what? Per capita, in this country, we are also the highest rate per capita who get the flu. And you would think that if the flu shot actually worked, if we were the highest country per capita to get the flu shot, wouldn't we be the lowest per capita to get the flu if the flu shot actually worked? Not the highest to take the flu shot and the highest to actually have the flu. The numbers don't add up for vaccinations for me. The numbers do not add up. Just think about that for a second. Flu shots. If you're thinking about it now, better get a flu shot. It's coming up winter. If they actually worked, would we have the highest amount of flu cases in the per capita in the world? No, we'd have the lowest. It doesn't make sense. Just think about it, man. Just think about it. That's all I'm saying today. So, quick little, information session on vaccinations. Well, it's probably going to be it for this short podcast. I'm Garry Butterfield. It's Easter Monday. I'm drinking at 6:30 in the morning talking about vaccinations, and I will talk to you soon. Till then.